sometimes things appear really bad. And as we talked about last week in threat lockdown and all of these things, it's if things appear threatening or scary, we can tend to lock down. We can freeze up.
Yeah.
And it's when you're in that state, it's really difficult to get yourself out of it. And so one of the things that you can do to encourage yourself to get out of lockdown and into more of a productive frame of mind is sometimes called a worst case scenario.
Okay.
I like to call it the Doomsday Scenario because it is more evocative. And, a lot of people are familiar with Murphy's Law. So what can go wrong will. Okay, so in a Doomsday Scenario, it's just another type of mental simulation. You'll see this as a theme over and over again. Mental simulation is very important. You're doing a specific type of mental simulation.
Okay.
And that is, you're assuming that Mr. Murphy of Murphy's Law shows up and absolutely ruins your day. Everything that can go wrong does go wrong.
Okay.
And you're assuming that's true.
Okay.
Okay? So you launch a new product and everybody hates it and you lose all your money and you bank forecloses on your house.
Oh, jeez.
And you have a covered story on the New York Times talking about your complete and utter failure.
Oh, no.
And, as egregious as you can get with this, you want this to be the absolute
worst
thing that could ever happen to you. Okay?
Yes.
And even, sometimes if you're doing somewhat risky things, like climbing Mount Everest, assume that you die. Okay? You're trying to construct the absolute worst case scenario.
Okay.
For this. Okay? And here's what you do with it. Okay? First, by going through and constructing this scenario, you can ask yourself the question, is this likely? Or how likely is it that each of these bad things will happen?
Okay.
Okay? Sometimes it's not very likely. We're scared of the tiger that does not exist. Okay? And constructing a doomsday scenario is a good way, now that it's, when it's in your head,
got it.
It feels very scary.
Right.
When it's down there on paper, you're like, that's stupid.
Okay.
So that's the purpose of that. The other thing that you can do is to find ways to improve upon the worst case.
Okay.
So you can start, this is, something we'll talk about in great detail later, which is called scenario planning. But if this thing, if these specific bad things did happen, what would you do?
Okay.
How would you respond? How would you act? And would that be okay? Does that improve upon the worst case? And, so many times, a lot of people, particularly when it comes to starting businesses or launching new products, oh, that's so risky. It's like, well, what if you quit your job and, you do something and, your product or your offering doesn't work out and you spend all this money and you go bankrupt and then you're going to be homeless and you're going to live in a van down by the river and, your life is going to come crumbling down and everybody is going to pass on the street and point at that person and say, oh, that poor person, they never should have started a business.
All right.
Probably not going to happen. And, with all of those things going well, or going wrong, your product doesn't work out.
Yeah.
Or you run out of money. Or, the bank forecloses on your house. Or, all of those things. You can examine each one of those things in detail.
Right.
And say, if this was a possibility, first, would I survive? Would I be okay? And a lot of those things that we're really scared about, when you look at it, yes, let's say, you're put on the front cover of the New York Times business section as this is what not to do. There's actually, I don't remember the name of the lady, but the CEO of pets.com. I'll have to find the article.
I remember this.
Took on a whole bunch of venture capital money. At the height of the .com bubble, and the whole company imploded. And she was literally made the case, probably at Harvard Business Review. I'll have to find it. But the case study of what not to do, how to fail in a very large way. Okay, horrible. That's most people's worst nightmares. And this lady lived it. And she wrote an article a couple of years later about how, that was devastating and it was hard. But she's back in the game and she's starting another business and she's stronger for having learned what she already went through.
Oh, yeah.
she lived the worst case scenario, and she was fine. It wasn't fun. She learned a lot. She's doing a lot of things differently now.
But she didn't die, is what like our lizard brain thinks is going to happen when these bad things show up at the door.
Exactly, because sometimes physiologically, but also sometimes socially, we're very social beings, and a loss of social status a lot of times, from a biological standpoint, is interpreted as being, ostracism from the group is seen as equivalent to death. From a biological standpoint. It's not true.
Right.
Being exiled from the group a long time ago used to be a really big deal.
Right.
Now, not so much. Or being looked down upon, or, all of those things. So, your doomsday scenario, anything that you can do to simulate, okay, is this a ghost tiger? Is this something that's really not there that I don't have to worry about? If it is something I need to worry about, is there anything that I can do to improve upon it? And if I can improve upon it, will it be okay? Is it a risk worth taking?
Cool.
And more often than not, what you'll find is when you construct your doomsday scenario, you'll find that you were scared of a lot of things that you don't need to be scared of. And even if something bad goes wrong, it's not nearly going to be as bad as you think. And, the things that you can prepare for, it gives you a first start in actually preparing for them. So even if they do happen, you'll be okay.
Cool.
That is a doomsday scenario.